Hello, welcome to Global Connections. I'm David Lanou, the Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Hawaii Pacific University, and I'm guest hosting for Carlos Juarez. Today we're going to think globally but talk locally. We're going to speak about some of the most important social problems facing our island community. For the first two segments, we're going to talk about homelessness, and then we're going to talk about domestic violence. Homelessness is an issue that is on the minds of everybody on the islands, but often we talk about it as a policy issue, a political issue, and we don't often talk about it in human terms. And what I want to do today is talk about homelessness in those human terms. HPU is sponsoring the Community Engagement Homelessness Awareness Week. That will start on March 27th and go all the way through April 2nd. It's sponsored by the School of Social Work, and I'm fortunate to have with me today Dr. Michaela Wrinkle, who is Assistant Professor of Social Work at Hawaii Pacific University and one of the leaders of the campaign to put the Homelessness Awareness Week together. Michaela, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Tell me a little bit about how this all got started.
It got started internally, where the administration was trying to figure out how to put out to the HPU community some of the consequences of the passing of the sit-lie ban in Waikiki and an increasing presence of persons experiencing homelessness, possibly on the mall. And so it was, what do we do about that? And the School of Social Work got involved, thinking that we really need to start getting more engaged as a university community around this issue, that many of us are doing things on our own, but as a community, we're not really talking about them together. So we started with Social Work Month is March, so we celebrate Social Work Month. We thought this would be a great month to kind of take this on and bring in a speaker and just expand it exponentially from there.
That's great. Can you tell me a little bit about what you expect, what you hope to get out of this, what you hope our students get out and the community gets out of this?
We're really focusing on partnerships. So we decided that the most important message in terms of the experience of homelessness that we wanted to achieve at the end of this, that's why it's a community engagement project, is that the solution is there for all of us to become engaged, and that we all have to be part of the solution, rather than that this is social work's problem or nursing's problem or the legislature's problem. So for us, it's getting the conversation started so that we start building some of those connections. And HPU, as a member of the Chinatown, of the downtown business community, that those partnerships extend between HPU and some of the businesses down here who are very much involved in this issue. So all kinds of partnerships we're hoping will evolve out of this. So we didn't want it to be this one-time awareness thing. So let's go talk about it for a week and then I'll run back to our hovels and pretend everything's fine. But that there actually is commitment to action that happens after the week. And so this is a beginning of something that next year we're doing something else, or that we have partnerships started.
What I really like about this and about your program is that too often we talk about, what's the solution to homelessness, as if there's a solution,
right,
when really it's such a complex problem that we have to come at from so many different angles. Can you tell us about some of the angles you're coming at it from during Homelessness Week?
Right. Well, let me back up, because I want to underline what you're saying, which is this. Right now in Hawaii, we're talking about housing first as the model, and that kind of is the focus right now, as if there is one solution to such a complex problem. And that's why I think it really calls for multiple partnerships, that we're talking about persons who are chronically homeless, we're talking about veterans, we're talking about persons experiencing homelessness because of domestic violence, right. We're talking about persons from COFA who've come here and are experiencing homelessness. Each of them has families experiencing homelessness. Each of them has different needs, and solutions are different for each one of those populations of people. So we need to have multiple ideas on the table and multiple programs to kind of address the issue and hopefully get to the point where we're preventing homelessness rather than reacting so much to it. So the week, in terms of the different approaches that we're taking, we're doing educational, because we're an educational body. So that's our primary we started with having some panels, doing educational panels. So we have one panel, an academic panel, we're calling it. So we have someone from the College of Business, someone from anthropology, someone from environmental sciences, someone from social work, and someone from nursing.
So very interdisciplinary.
Yes,
yeah.
I think that's important. So everyone, kind of what does your profession, or what can you contribute to understanding on this issue? Lynette Cruz, is she emeritus or a current faculty?
She's the Kapuna in residence.
Right.
Yeah.
So she's going to talk about, for example, the history piece about homelessness in Hawaii, and kind of giving us the context of what's unique about homelessness here, that you can't really understand the issue without understanding land rights, the history around land rights, private property versus public property. So talking about national wage, and kind of the macro issues from business. So that academic panel is going to talk about that. Then we also have a kind of a solutions panel. So we have people from the faith community, from the social service community, from a local advocate, the state, Colin Kippen, the state administrator for homelessness, and the Hawaii Tourism and Lodging Association president, because they've been key in contributing money to help with the effort. So they're going to talk about, from each sector, what is happening right now in efforts to combat the issue. So those are the educational pieces that we're doing.
I also noticed that the arts are playing a big role
Right.
in this week. You have a photographer, you have a writer, at least one writer, and you're spotlighting a play that we're going to be talking about in the second segment. How do the arts come into? We don't usually think of the arts as part of the solutions to homelessness. How do the arts, in your view, come into play here?
For me, it's the window piece. It's building awareness. It's building connection. It's building empathy. I think the arts are an access point to connecting and understanding someone else. So, for example, Diana Kim is the photographer that you mentioned, and she has done a 2-year project where she's photo documenting experiences of homelessness here. And during that project, she found her father, who was having a period of homelessness and had not seen him for quite a while, I believe. And so it's this very moving story she tells through pictures about what that experience is like. And you and I sitting here talking about it, I don't think that gets conveyed as well as as arts does that. So I think it builds connection and builds humanity in people, and that's the base where these solutions have to come from. That any of us could experience homelessness, that circumstances could happen to anyone, and so that connection then helps us come up with solutions. So I think the play written by one of the faculty at HPU does a great example of doing that, telling the stories.
Yeah, tell me a little bit how your students are involved.
So for social work, I mean, we have students involved in this issue not just during this week, so it isn't a one-time thing for them. We have students who are currently doing their field placements in agencies serving the homeless population, so they'll be involved. We have a resource fair on Wednesday where different social service agencies are coming. It'll give opportunities for students, faculty, staff to find how they can help out with the issue, whether it's volunteering, supporting an agency, getting involved on boards. Nonprofit agencies are always looking for active board members. So they're going to be there on the mall soliciting participation from others. So our students will be participating, putting on some of those resource tables. They are helping out, doing some of the canvassing, getting the local businesses to know about the events, because we're hoping we're not directing this just at the HPU community, that it really is meant to be downtown. So the businesses, the people who work down here, the people who live down here in the many condos that kind of surround HPU. So we're hoping they'll get involved and come out too. So our students are going around canvassing, getting the word out about this week.
What are the challenges, not just with our students, but with our broader community? What are the challenges of having people start to think of homelessness as a human problem and not a political problem or something, the problem of homelessness, something we have to be that has to be solved. How do we build that empathy and understanding?
Right. I think I think it's wonderful that this issue is being highlighted so much in Hawaii. Then the conversation really got going around that sit-lie ban. So there was a lot of protesting around it. Everyone was talking about it, and talking is good. It's in the paper. There are segments on the news now. So I think us having conversations helps. I think emotionally sometimes it helps us to distance ourselves from it, and so there's a natural pull to think that those are the other people, and that's one thing that the play, the Houseless in Paradise play, does a wonderful job, is telling stories, and you hear the stories and you go, that could be me. I could abruptly lose my job. Something physical happen to me where I am disabled and am no longer able to. I don't have that many paychecks in the bank ahead of what. So it builds that connection where I think it breaks down that barrier of that doesn't happen to me. There's something, they're the other, and it helps us see that they're not the other, they're us.
Is it tougher to get students to buy into that? Students are young, they're indestructible,
right.
Nothing bad is ever going to happen to them.
Right. I think it is. I think that's something that's part of what social work education is about, is helping break down that barrier and helping teaching people how to build connection. So as something that our profession is very involved in is how do you do that with students, help them connect to people where their circumstances may seem so different from your own. But I think it is harder with young.
I have a question from an HPU student via our live Twitter feed. Okay. How important do you think religious organizations are in helping with the homelessness issue?
That's one of the reasons why we were insistent on having someone represented on our panel around the solutions. The religious communities have always been very involved in providing social services. People, sometimes they think that it's government providing primary social services, that it's the social workers out there in agencies. There are a lot of providers here that are not government-based and that are happening in churches. Family Promise is one of those. There are pastors, rabbi, priests throughout the islands that are doing direct services. We have Bob Marchant, who's the director of River of Life, so one of our neighbors, who's going to be on the panel talking about what his organization, his church is doing to help deal with this issue. So I think for many religious organizations, it's a calling. It fits in with part of their mission and beliefs is to help others. So a natural match with this issue.
Now, during Homelessness Week, the first thing on the agenda is the movie The Soloist.
Right.
And one of the things that I really enjoyed about that movie is not only that it put a human face on homelessness, but it also did have a nice, tight, happy Hollywood ending where everybody lives happily ever after. Right. Life's more complicated than that.
Right. I agree with you in that it's the story of Nathaniel Ayers, who is played by Jamie Foxx, and Robert Downey Jr. Steve Lopez is the LA Times reporter who Robert Downey Jr. is playing. And they connect up, and it follows Nathaniel through one of his experiences of homelessness, and he's a Juilliard-trained musician and has schizophrenia. And Steve Lopez, who then we're having come to talk on, so we're showing the movie on Friday on the mall, open to the public. And on Monday at Science Pub down at Gordon Biersch, Steve Lopez will be there to talk about his relationship with Nathaniel. And I know one of his points is he's still 10 years later involved with Nathaniel, and it is it's a process for him. It wasn't a destination that you arrive at, that I was homeless, I am no longer homeless, it's all over. But that for him, it's a journey that he's on, and that Steve has remained involved with Nathaniel this whole time. And that's one of the reasons we're excited to have him, is he talks about the importance of a relationship. Right. And you don't pass someone by, but take the time to form a relationship.
So if people want to learn more about HPU Homelessness Week, where do they go?
They go to, we have a website that just went live. So it's www.hpu.edu/socialwork/homeless week. So
Thanks so much, Michaela.
Absolutely, thank you.
When we come back, we will talk about the play that Michaela referenced, Houseless in Paradise. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
Here's the deal. I'm Jay Fidel. I'm the host of Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, which is the Energy Policy Forum's program on Wednesday. That's how we call Wednesday Energy Wednesday. We call it Energy Wednesday every Wednesday. Are you surprised? Okay, and we try to get guys like Jim Alberts here from Hawaiian Electric who can tell us what's really going on in energy. We want to be informed. It's so important. It's the most important initiative in our state. Clean energy is major, okay? And that's why we cover it on this show. That's the deal. What do you think, Sharon?
I think that's great. That's why we're here every Wednesday from 4 to 5, and we hope you all join us so we can hear people like Jim coming on our show and co-host Ray Starling from Hawaii Energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here today. You've seen this. You heard what she said. What do you think?
I think it's a tremendous opportunity for people to come together and talk about the issues. Oftentimes, there isn't a good forum to bring these key issues out into the public, and this is a tremendous way to go about it. And the activity of this show is essential to keep talking about energy because, as you said, it's such an essential part of our lives that we need to pay attention to it and we need to think about the future.
Okay, Ray, your turn.
Well, this is a special time in the history of Hawaii where we're making some pretty radical changes in the way we use energy and generate energy. And this show is the one place you can count on coming to every Wednesday and hearing something about the latest issues that are on the table, being discussed, that will affect us all going forward. So come join us, and if you have some ideas you want to share with us about energy, give us a call and let us know. We'll put you up here and let you talk for an hour. So come see us.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Jim. It's great to be, from ThinkTech's point of view, it's great to have this show. We love the show. It's our most important show. So come around and listen to us 4 to 5 on Wednesday. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon, and on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. That's Ted Ralston. You know, Ted is the host of Where the Road Leads. It shows every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. It's about technology. It's about how people collaborating and solve problems with modern technology. It's where the road leads. We all know that. We should all be listening. Join us there, 4 to 5 p.m. every Friday. Now, what about that do you agree with?
All of it.
I knew he'd say that. Aloha. Say aloha.
Aloha.
Good.
Welcome back to Global Connections. Remember, we talked in the first segment about HPU Homelessness Week, and I do want to again remind everybody that that will be taking place between March 27th and April 2nd, coming up very soon. And one of the features of that is a play written by HPU Associate Professor of English, Mark Sharks. Except Mark didn't exactly write it. He helped put it together. It was written by a lot of people. It's a very fascinating story. The play has won the Po'okela Award. It has been put on in a number of venues, and we will be putting it on at HPU. Mark can't be with us today, but we do have with us two wonderful guests. We have Terry Madden, and Terry is the director of Houseless in Paradise, which is the name of the play. And Terry also won the Ocala Award for that. And we have one of the actors, Jeffrey Terry Sousa, who also has a really compelling story to tell us. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
And let me start with Terry. Terry, tell me about Houseless in Paradise. Tell me about Mark's vision and how you and he and Play Builders put that together.
Okay, well, Play Builders' mission is to create community-based productions by going out into the community, doing interviews and story circles, and then taking those words and shaping them into a play. And we often commission a playwright to do that. So in this case, we commissioned Mark Jarks, and it was actually Mark Jarks' idea to come join us and create this play. And what he did is he went out, I thought he would interview maybe 15 people. He went out and interviewed 60 individual members of the homeless community from all over the island. He had his mother-in-law and daughter typing out the transcripts from these interviews. I think it was over 100 hours. We had another community organizer, Robert Yokoyama, and myself, all working together to make this happen. And we ended up taking it on tour around the island. We did churches, Catholic Charities, Hawaii. We did Ala Moana Beach Park. We even took it out to the Waianae Boat Harbor. So it was an amazing, intense experience. And I want to make it clear is that we invite people from the communities we work with to participate in the telling of their own stories. So through Mark's contacts, we had many people come up from the community and join us in the creation of the play.
And I should mention also that Mark's play was supported in part by the HPU Trustees Scholarly Endeavors Program.
Thank you
very
for
generous
mentioning that.
gift there. And my understanding is that Mark did all these interviews, and really the interviews themselves, the words of the folks that he talked to, were the heart of the play.
Right, and Mark tried very hard to make it verbatim, and they were direct address. And we were very fortunate that so many creative people came to the table. And we had people from the community theater, but for an example, what Jeffrey brought to the table, we continued to shape and create. We didn't change anything that Mark did, but we added. So we took that script and let's add music, and that's what Jeffrey brought to the table.
So Jeffrey, you're not only an actor in this play, you're also in a sense one of the co-authors, one of the co-writers. Tell us your story. Tell us about meeting Mark and how all that came together.
I was asked by a friend of mine, Gigi, who is one of the directors of Gregory House, who I've been associated with for many years. Gigi had requested that I speak to Mark because so many people that come through Gregory House at this point in time have had difficulty with homelessness. Initially, Gregory House was a place for a hospice for people to live out the rest of their life with HIV or AIDS. And as the medicines have come through and made it virtually a very small percentage of people who come down with HIV will die from HIV. It's all very, it's taken care of itself. So the direction of Gregory House changed from a hospice to a housing placement. So I would meet many people there that were homeless and had their difficulties, as was I. So she asked me to speak to Mark about it. And initially I thought, no, I don't want to go down there and put all my dirty laundry out there, so to speak. And all the signs kept telling me that this was something that I needed to do. So I went in and spoke to Mark, and about maybe 7 or 8 minutes into the interview, I said, I can't do this. And I got up and I walked out. I said, I'm not ready. I can't see myself owning this yet. I still can't believe it happened. And I'm certainly not ready to talk about it to everyone in the community. So I walked out, and he came downstairs, and I was standing outside, still thinking about, am I doing the right thing, walking away? And he came over and he said to me, Jeffrey, I want you to understand something. Up until the moment of the show, and even during the show, if there's an actor playing you and you feel uncomfortable about anything, you say something and it stops immediately. This is all telling your story because you're comfortable with it. And if you're not, and by that time we were already turning around and going back to the office and continued the interview. And the interview that he did with me is actually broken up into 2 parts of the play. So it's quite, eye-opening. But as we started talking about the play, we were kind of, I had a vision in my head of 4 people sitting on boxes telling their story kind of a thing. And one day I was listening to the radio and I heard a song, and it was the theme from The Valley of the Dolls that Dionne Warwick made popular in the 60s. And it talks about, it talks about very, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's a simile. It talks about drugs and alcohol, the movie does. And so this song is basically, I've got to get out of here. I've got to wake up and change. And yes, and in the car the next day for Terry, I sang the song, and she said, I never knew what the lyrics were until you sang it, and they mean so much. She said, we have to put that in the play. So we have adapted into smaller versions, maybe a verse or a few lines of a song. And the character that sings that song is this person who, in the initial play, becomes homeless in front of the audience. They explain how things came apart through song. And the nice clothes go, and they become homeless and go sit in front of their tent.
So you play yourself in this play?
Yeah. Yes.
And how does it feel to be on stage playing yourself? And we talk about actors who play themselves all the time, but they don't. You were actually playing yourself.
I am, and a lot of times it's overwhelming. Reliving a lot of the things that were difficult, reliving a lot of the things that were wonderful. It's the double-edged sword, you know. So, when that's probably the funnest part of my role is at the end when I talk about how things are better. I heard you mention in the previous interview that there was you mentioned that, you know, it had the Hollywood ending where everybody's happy. Our play kind of has that as well, because each of our characters at the end of the play repeat something that they said, or tell a little vignette about something that happened in their life that shows you that things are better now. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to look through the dismal part of your life and end it with something that's very hopeful and exciting and looking to the future.
Terry, you directing this play, was it different from directing other plays? Were there special opportunities, challenges, rewards?
I think Michaela mentioned something about, it just sort of brings an awareness to you. Yes, I can't say it didn't have its challenges, but I consider it was a blessing. And for me as a regular person, it brought an awareness of when we walk by someone on the street, they have a story.
Yeah.
And maybe some of our judgments about the people who are on the street are rather harsh, and we want to ignore them. But when you understand that these are human beings, and some of them have suffered from very young ages sexual abuse, some of them lost their families. Yeah, there's addiction, but we all are human. We all have problems, and we just have to do better. If everyone, businesses like HPU is an educational entity. Right now, you're doing the best you can to bring awareness and to do what you do best, which is education, to help the problem. If every business did that, if every organization did what they do best in order to uplift our homeless, I think we would be in such a much better position.
Jeffrey, I did see the play, and I was overwhelmed by your performance. I thought it was just remarkable. Do you have acting experience?
I started off very young, being commercials, theater when I was a kid, and enjoyed that all the way through high school and a couple of years of college. And then occasionally I would audition for a community theater, but it had been 20 years since I'd been in a play. And I auditioned for a play at Manoa Valley Theater because it was a satirical murder mystery in the old English manner, so to speak. And the character reminded me of Commander McBragg, the cartoon that I used to watch when I was a child. Well, you know, there we were back in the, with all these embellished stories. So it was a piece of cake for me to do this voice and I kind of knew immediately that it was going to, that I was going to get the part. It was kind of fun watching the audience. And so once I got into theater and got onto the stage at the theater, realizing who I was working with was so overwhelming because I worked with one of the professors here at HPU, Stacy, who taught drama, and so many professional actors that take the time from their day, even though they have a regular working job, and come to present something to the community for their enjoyment. I had all these wonderful people around me, and they thought that I was so wonderful, and it was so overwhelming, thinking I haven't done this in a long time, maybe I'm onto something.
So after a 20-year break, are you going, now that you've done this play, are you doing others? Are you back into it?
Yes,
Oh, that's wonderful.
I've been involved in 3 projects so far. One was the Bloody Murder at Manoa Valley Theater, where Stacy asked me to speak to Mark. That was the first time I was asked to speak to Mark. And when the director of Gregory House asked me to speak to Mark, I thought maybe there's a reason that all these people are asking me. So yes, then Houseless in Paradise, and then just after that I was asked to be an assistant director with also a Po'okela award-winning play, which was Red, that was produced by Tag Theater. And so I've been encouraged by all of my associates in the theater to continue, and it's been a wonderful
And Mark has written another play based on Jeffrey's person called The Saleable Thing, The Unsaleable Thing. And that is also going to be read on April 2nd.
That's right. For those of you who haven't had a chance to watch Houseless in Paradise, to come see it, you absolutely must. You will be moved, you will be changed, your view of the homeless will be altered forever, and it'll make you a better person too. On April 1st, we will be producing, or they will be producing, I will be watching Houseless in Paradise on the 4th Street Mall between Baratania and Hotel. And on April 2nd at 7 p.m. at Mark's Garage downtown, we will also be showing Houseless in Paradise, the play, and as an added bonus, there'll also be Mark Shark's new play that Harry just mentioned, The Unsaleable Thing. You have to get down here and see it. Let's take a break. Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Inspired by an ancient culture, classical Chinese dance, vigorous physicality, timeless stories, 5,000 years of Chinese music and dance. Shen Yun presents authentic Chinese culture. Coming to Blaisdell Concert Hall, May 8th and 9th. Tickets at shenyun.com or call 808-792-3919.
Aloha, Yappers. This is your host, Kingsley, for the Yap Show. Every Friday, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. You can catch us here live, ThinkTech Hawaii, and then later on, we upload to our YouTube channel. We talk about youth issues, policies, youth programs, and how to transition yourself into adulthood.
But this was like a sign, I guess. Hey, life's like, hey,
Right.
now's your chance to go back to school, which I'm doing.
Catch us here again live, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. Aloha.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia, and by Asia we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Aloha, welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii. My name is Josh Green. I'm the host of a program called Healthcare in Hawaii. I'm a physician. I work in the emergency department on the Big Island. I also serve in the state senate, which, please don't hold that against me, doesn't detract from my television program. We speak about all the big healthcare issues in the state. We get together on Tuesdays from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we try to talk about the most important issues in healthcare. This is a terrific venue for people to learn about healthcare. There are many programs on this station. We broadcast it later, not just on the internet, but also on OC16. Thanks for joining us. Please be informed healthcare consumers.
Where am I supposed to look?
Welcome back to Global Connections. Well, we've talked about homelessness in the first two segments, talked about the upcoming HPU Homelessness Awareness Week, and we just had a wonderful segment with the director and an actor from the play Houseless in Paradise, which is going to be part of Homelessness Awareness Week, will be shown on the Fort Street Mall on April 1st. Definitely an experience that you don't want to miss. Homelessness is only one of the issues that we face here in Hawaii. We have other social issues too. One of the most serious is domestic violence. And in some sense, domestic violence is related to homelessness because a lot of people, especially women and children, are driven into the street by abusive relationships and by domestic violence. I'm joined by Patricia Ellerson. Dr. Patricia Ellerson is Assistant Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at HPU. She is also Associate Professor of Psychology. Trish, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Trish is an expert on domestic family relations and on domestic violence. One gets the impression watching the news that domestic violence is at an all-time epidemic, that the situation is worse than it's ever been. Is that perception accurate, or is it more the case that we hear more about it now, the media covers it more effectively, it's law enforcement makes it more of a priority?
I think the incidence of domestic violence has gone down slightly, but it is tied somewhat to the economy. So when people are struggling in the economy, there is more domestic violence around. So I don't think it's just a perception that there's more domestic violence. I think there actually is, than sometimes in our history when the economy is more productive.
Is it a worse problem in a place like Hawaii where the economic tensions are maybe a little bit greater because of some of the things we're talking about? Homelessness, the cost of housing here, the fact that so many people can be one break away, one job loss from living on the street. Does that kind of pressure increase the probability?
It does. It is tied to socioeconomic status, although domestic violence occurs at all levels of socioeconomic status. It is more prevalent when you have those kinds of stressors, when you have trouble putting food on the table or paying for a home or supporting your children or anything like that. Those stressors build up, and of course one of the ways it comes out is that you hurt the person that you love, which is domestic violence. And of course we think of domestic violence as just being between partners, but that also includes child abuse.
As a psychologist, you've obviously studied and read and done research on this. What are some of the other factors other than economic stress that also play into this issue?
Well, I'm actually a developmental psychologist, and one of the things that plays into the issue is poor family relationships.
Let me stop for just a second first, because people are not going to necessarily know what a developmental psychologist is. Tell us what that is first.
I look at the way that your upbringing or your childhood plays into your adulthood. So how does your early life affect your later life?
Okay, so go ahead and tell us what developmental psychology has learned.
Okay, so when you have problems in your family of origin, especially between parent and child, you may have an insecure attachment relationship with your parent or something like that. It causes you to feel not so good about yourself and not so good about other people too. The early relationships help you to build sort of a schema or a template about how your future relationships or your current relationships will be. And if you had this relationship that was insecure with your primary caregiver, usually the mother, but can be the father as well, then you feel like maybe you're not worthy of other people's attention or other people's love, and other people aren't dependable. So you have this sort of insecure attachment with other people as well, not only with your parent.
Now, you've done some work and are doing some work on the role of powerlessness. And I know that the work is in progress and you don't have a lot of conclusions yet, but maybe say a little bit about what that's all about.
Sure. Well, there has been work done about powerlessness, personal powerlessness, when a person feels like they can't affect even their own life or those of others, and child abuse. So mothers who have a low perceived control in their caregiving relationship, that means that they think that the child has more control than they do in the relationship, which of course is not really true. Parents have control, but the parent perceives that they don't have control in the child. Maybe the child is non-responsive, or the child has a difficult temperament or something like that. They tend to use more coercive and abusive parenting practices, like in disciplining their children. And we think that the same thing happens within romantic relationships. When you feel like you have no control in the relationship, in the coupledom, so to speak, then you may, when problems arise, when conflicts arise, try to regain that control by using domestic violence, by using coercive or harsh problem-solving, conflict tactics.
What do the lessons of psychology and developmental psychology tell us about the ways that we can prevent domestic violence, and also maybe the ways we should be dealing with it in a law enforcement sense?
Well, it really is, instead of just putting people in jail for it, you really need to educate people. So there are ways to educate people about their feelings of powerlessness or their insecure attachments with other people, and the feelings that they have, the schemas or the templates that they have that play into these relationships.
What's a schema?
A schema is like a cognitive knowledge structure. It's a structure that you have in your head that encompasses the way you think the world works. Okay. So I might have a schema about a college professor, for example, that they have a lot of books in their office and that they are kind of nerdy and those kinds of things.
Well, you nailed it.
Yeah. So we have schemas about our relationships. And if you came up in a family where there was a lot of conflict, your parents were not responsive to you, your parents, responsiveness is really a big deal, but your parents maybe were very harsh with you, made you feel inferior, those kinds of things, then you're going to project that onto other people because that's the way you think relationships are meant to be. And you're going to be suspicious and attribute hostile intent to people when maybe it doesn't exist and things like that. So educating people, even if they've grown up in a family like that, that's not something that can't change later on. That can change with education. And I don't mean just going to college or something like that, but through therapy or educational group therapy types, things like that.
Yeah, let's talk about domestic violence in children for a moment.
Okay.
Because there has been, I think, very clearly an evolution over time in what's considered domestic violence. I mean, I go back several years to a time when I was in school when paddling was very common in public schools. And yet today, in a lot of places, that would be considered child abuse, especially when it was done in the school as opposed to the home. Can you talk a little bit about that evolution and how that changes our thinking about the subject?
Sure. One of the things about child abuse is that there's not a really cohesive idea among Americans anyway of what it is. That some people think that spanking is child abuse, and other people think it's okay as long as you don't hit the child with something or something like that. And those of us who study violence in family relationships would like to see no hitting of children because it can, that is a risk factor. It can lead to abuse. however you define that abuse. And sometimes that's defined as leaving a mark on the child, or lots of different ways that we define it. And we define it as using a hairbrush or a switch or something like that as well. And in fact, most of us are anti-spanking that work in this field.
Well, this is fascinating. We've got to talk about this again sometime.
Sure.
Trish, thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And if I could close on a sad note, we lost one of our own this week. Dr. Andrew Opitz, assistant professor of English, passed away on Monday at the age of 39. Andy was a remarkable teacher, a magnificent scholar, a versatile scholar, a wonderful university citizen, and just an all-around good guy. Andy did a lot of research in areas like dark humor, satire, and Andy understood the importance of laughter to get us through the tough times. Andy's path and mine didn't cross nearly enough while he was here, but every time I talked to Andy, I felt that sense of warmth, that sense of humor that he brought with him. I saw him at the hospital just before he left for his home in Minnesota, and we knew at that point things were looking pretty rough. But I have to say, in the hour and a half I spent with him and his wonderful wife, Erin, the only word to describe it would be fun. He wanted to hear jokes, he wanted to tell jokes, he wanted to tell stories, he wanted to talk about students and classrooms and pirates and cupcakes and everything under the sun. He had that kind of versatile mind. Sometimes the measure of a life isn't so much how long the flame lasts, but how brightly it burns. And Andy's flame burned very brightly indeed. It touched the lives of his students, and it still burns in the hearts of his friends and his colleagues on the faculty and staff who miss him already. Thank you so much for watching Global Connections. I'm David Lanou.